All right, it's time for grades for the 49ers and their loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's also time to give you an NFC West update. The Seahawks have just traded for Leonard Williams, defensive end of the New York Giants. This is an impact move. A couple days ago, the Seahawks signed Frank Clark, who was well past his prime. I don't think that moves the needle at all. But Seattle picking up Leonard Williams, well, yes, that moves the needle. They're serious. They're in first place in NFC West. I think that they've needed more talent, especially at the edge position, the defensive line position. And Leonard Williams is a flexible player who can essentially line up anywhere up front. Seattle now has that. So the 49ers have found themselves in a dogfight now in the NFC West. They dropped 3 straight games. They have Seattle coming up for what I call the Philadelphia sandwich. They're going to play the Seahawks on Thanksgiving night. Then they travel cross country to face the Eagles. Then they come back and they host the Seahawks at Levi's Stadium. It's going to be a really, really pivotal 3-game stretch for the 49ers, and Seattle's going to have Leonard Williams against the 49ers. And Seattle's going to have Leonard Williams for the rest of this season. So we will see if the 49ers are active here in the next 25, 26 hours before the trade deadline. I have been talking about potential additions for the 49ers. Montez Sweat of Washington, edge rusher who can set a really, really good edge against the run. He's been top 10 in that category over the past 4 seasons. Jalen Johnson, the cornerback for the Bears, he's having a career year. Jalen Johnson is out of Fresno, actually, Central High School out of Fresno. That could also be a player who the 49ers are interested in. So we will wait and see what the 49ers do. The Seahawks have just made a big move, and I'm here to talk about the 49ers against the Bengals. We do this every week. We go through the grades. I have the box score in my hand, and we can start with, why don't we start with special teams today? Special teams did not provide a good glue for the 49ers, so they're going to get a D from me. I remember the 49ers' first touchdown. They equalized the score. Cincinnati marched right down the field. 49ers marched right down the field in response. Then they kicked off, and Cincinnati returned to nearly midfield. A very bad time for poor kick coverage. But the complementary formula has not been the 49ers' strong suit over the past 3 games. Then there was an instance in the second half where the 49ers drove to about midfield into plus territory, technically, to the 49-yard line of the Cincinnati Bengals. And they punted. I mean, not a huge deal that you have to punt, but from plus territory, you better get your money's worth on the punt, especially if your defense is getting roasted. And Mitch Wishnowski's punt only netted the 49ers about 30 yards. Cincinnati started at their own 19-yard line. Not good enough in a game where the 49ers needed to be firing on all cylinders, or at least picking up their defense. So firing on the other cylinders, the special teams was not good enough on those 2 plays in particular. I thought they were big momentum killers in this game, and I'm going to give the special teams a D, although Jake Moody did make his 1 field goal attempt a 36-yarder. So not a very long field goal for the 49ers. So we're moving up through this reverse order this week. DBs for the 49ers, F. This is the first F that I've given out all season long. But when the opposing quarterback goes 28 of 32, when Joe Burrow completes 19 passes in a row, especially against a decent pressure profile from the 49ers, I understand that the first third down of the game was the fault of the 49ers pass rush. But over the rest of the game, the 49ers pass rush was getting some push up there in the pocket. They did sack Joe Burrow 3 times, and he still managed to complete 19 passes in a row. That should not happen at this level, point blank. And it did. And obviously the coverage schemes and the coverage combinations from Steve Wilks, that was supposed to be his forte. It has not been a 49ers strength so far. The one variable that's changed on the back end has been Steve Wilks, who is a defensive coordinator who specializes in DB play. And he blamed himself for a lot of the coverage misalignments against Minneapolis, or against Minnesota in Minneapolis the week prior. I'm going to guess that the next time that we hear from Steve Wilks, it's going to be a similar story against Cincinnati, because guys were just too open. Let me read you the 49ers pressure profile in this game. Maybe I could toss it open on the screen too. Because, again, it was not poor. Here it is. PFF just released their numbers. Get this up and firing for you right here. Check this out. Bosa, 9 pressures. Farrell, 5 pressures. Armstead, 4. Hargrave, 3. Kinlaw, 1. Randy Gregory, 1. Those are not pressure numbers that should equate with 19 consecutive completions from the opposing QB. And again, I get it. The coverage was good at the start of that first drive. And I brought this up in my article, which you should actually read. This is about complementary football. This is actually what I led with. The 49ers seem to have fixed some of the coverage combinations out of the gate. You had Drew Sample, the tight end, drop the pass when Dre Greenlaw was bearing in on him on first down. Then you had Isaiah Oliver shade toward Jamar Chase, who was running the slant against Charvarius Ward, and Oliver dropped the pick. So there should have been an interception on second down. Good coverage there. And then great coverage on 3rd and 10. But that's where Eric Armstead and Nick Bosa let Joe Burrow get away from them somehow, some way. And we'll get to that in the defensive line section. So the D-line obviously shared its culpability here too. But beyond that point where the 49ers covered well for those 3 plays, it just fell apart. And this is where the defense has to show some resilience. This is where Steve Wilks has to be better. DBs and Steve Wilks have to be better. If you're generating this type of pressure over the course of the game, Joe Burrow needs to be holding onto the ball for at least one more hitch on several of those passes, and there should be some more sacks. There certainly shouldn't be 19 completions. And this is why I talk about Jalen Johnson, a potential trade target for the 49ers, the cornerback from the Bears, because that would allow Charvarius Ward. It would allow Charvarius Ward to have a good partner on the outside, but it would allow Deommodore Lenoir to move inside. Isaiah Oliver really, really struggled for the 49ers in coverage yesterday. He was good near the line of scrimmage and run support. He had the nice tackle on the end around, the jet sweep that we saw from the Cincinnati Bengals, but he was not good against Jamar Chase biting on the fake. He wasn't good on the first touchdown from Cincinnati on the fade route that Joe Burrow throws better than most cornerbacks. The 49ers could use another coverage man. They certainly can. And that's, I've never given out an F before, I don't think. But when I saw what I did yesterday, Joe Burrow throwing essentially against air, I don't have another choice in the secondary. They also didn't tackle particularly well in this game. Talanoa Hufanga had a big missed tackle. I remember that allowed a first down earlier in the game. It's been, 3 or 4 games of poor tackling for the 49ers. I'm actually curious to see what the missed tackle exact numbers were for this football team. Let's look. Let's look before we move on to the linebacker position. PFF has its grades out. They track the missed tackles. We sort everything by game. We go to the 49ers defense. 13 missed tackles. That's a season high. So it's been 10 against Cleveland, 9 against Minnesota, 13 against the Cincinnati Bengals. And, maybe some of it's expected because the 49ers were on that short week and the Bengals were rested. So that could show up in the tackling numbers. But just doing the simple math, that's 32 tackles missed for the 49ers over the past 3 games after they had missed only 9 tackles over the 3 games prior to that. So the tackling is a huge issue. Talanoa Hufanga missed 3 tackles. That's part of the secondary's failing grade. Nick Bosa missed 2. Dre Greenlaw missed 3. You're going to see the linebackers don't have a great grade as well. Farrell 1. Fred Warner 1. Isaiah Oliver 1. And that adds up to 13 missed tackles for the 49ers. Eric Armstead and Charvarius Ward also with a missed tackle apiece. Anyway, to the linebackers. The defensive grades aren't going to be good. Again, Burrow lit the 49ers up, but Cincinnati also ran really well. And the 49ers have a bottom barrel run defense now, which is shocking because they're top 2 over the past 2 seasons. So this is something that has to fix. And the defensive line grade, just to give you a spoiler, is a D because the 49ers aren't setting a good edge. I think that's why Montez Sweat is in play for this football team. Even Nick Bosa struggled to set the edge yesterday. And a lot of that's about desire. Setting the edge and stopping screen passes, there's some want to that's part of that. There's some fight that has to be part of that. And again, the screen passes did too much damage. I said that Cincinnati entering this game was the most efficient screen team in football as far as success rate went. 49ers didn't stop the screen success rate. They weren't ready for the wide receiver screens. Hell, they weren't ready for anything defensively. But when we talk about screen passes specifically, I'm looking at this linebacker grade C-, and I'm thinking maybe it's too generous. Greenlaw did miss those 3 tackles. They didn't do well against the run. The linebackers have to be the ones flying around to those screens. Maybe I should have given them a D. Either way, C- is not going to get the 49ers far this season, so you get the point. As far as D-line, well, Bosa had 9 pressures. Bosa got in for half a sack. Armstead got in for 2 sacks. Best play call of the afternoon was Steve Wilkes dialing up on 3rd and long. In the first half, the blitz from Dre Greenlaw right up the middle. That allowed Eric Armstead to go into forklift mode against the guard. And the 49ers notched a sack. They needed a little bit more of that. They didn't blitz a whole lot in this game. They got pressure, though. Again, the pressure numbers for the 49ers solid from this defensive line, but these same guys did not stop the run. So they're getting pressure. The defensive backfield is not helping them, which is why DBs get an F. But they didn't. Finish their. I leaked the O-line grade soon. Here you could see there. That was a little inadvertent leak from me. But they didn't finish the sack. Armstead and Bosa early on. I'll give them a D instead of an F for the pressure. But boy, things have to get better here against the run. And this might be a different game if Bosa and Armstead had finished that initial sack. On to the O-line. Do we want pressure numbers from the O-line? All right, I'll give you pressure numbers for the O-line. Let me pull them up right here. You already see the grade. It's not good. And here are pressure numbers. This is pass protection. Brendel gave up 3 pressures. Also got blown up on the early 3rd and 1 try to Kyle Juszczyk. That really set a tone for the game. Spencer Burford, 3 pressures over right guard. Has also been the 2nd most penalized guard in football this year. A costly holding penalty yesterday. Jalen Moore might be a little bit better than you expect, but 2 fairly damaging pressures late. He was working against Trey Hendrickson for most of the game. Tougher assignment than he had in Minnesota, where Danielle Hunter was lined up on the other side. Aaron Banks, 2 pressures lined up next to Jalen Moore. Colton McKivitz, he was working against Sam Hubbard, who's more of a run stopper. McKivitz fared better in pass protection, but they gave up too much. Purdy was running for his life, and at the same time, Purdy was the 49ers' leading rusher. It's not going to cut it. I mean, you have to open up holes in the run game, and the 49ers offensive line without Trent Williams is not getting the job done. I told you, DJ Reader blew up Jake Brendel early in the game. I get Brendel is an athletic center, so you want to get him on the outside zone, but the 49ers do need to be able to get a yard when they need a yard, and they couldn't do that in this game. You wonder when John Feliciano is going to get a look at one of the interior line spots, center or right guard, probably right guard. I think Brendel's been better than Burford, but both positions deserve scrutiny when the 49ers can't get a yard. And Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams, they will be walking through that door at some point. Williams especially will specifically help the offensive line. I think Deebo's punishing running style can also help the offensive line, but Trent Williams has been a cheat code to cover up some major issues along this front, and the 49ers are really missing him right now. Tight end, looking strong for the 49ers. That's George Kittle. I mean, this underscores some of the overreactions and why people need to chill much of the time. George Kittle has, after only being, 1 target, I think, 2 targets against Cleveland, he's had 2 really nice games. 11 targets, 9 receptions, 149 yards. Brock Purdy threw that great pass to him on the 34-yarder, backed up against his own goal line at the end of the first half. The only reason the 49ers try that play, though, is because they don't trust their defense, because it's not stopping anybody right now. I mean, think about the defense. You saw how bad the grades were. One more tangent before we get into these tight end grades. The 49ers defense should have given up 40+. They should have given up about 24 in the first half, but they were lucky to get that fumble at the end of the first half. And yeah, credit Cleveland Farrell for forcing it, but it wasn't a sensational play that Isaiah Oliver recovered there from Irv Smith, the tight end. And then Cincinnati missed a field goal too. 10 points left on the board for Cincinnati. Scorched earth performance against this defense. Anyway, Kittle try to keep the 49ers in the game along with Brock Purdy. I could give Kittle an A- because he did drop a pass a little bit later on, but the 49ers scored anyway on that drive. Purdy scored on the rollout through to Christian McCaffrey. And he also moved the chains by throwing across his body on the rollout. He did it twice, once to Kittle to move the chains, once to score to Christian McCaffrey. Whenever you're getting 9 for 149 from George Kittle, that's great in the pass game. Now you got to get him more involved in run blocking. The thing that people were complaining about that Kittle was doing too much of, it's actually what the 49ers need more of. I give the receivers a C. I can give you the stats for the wideouts in this game. Ayuk 5 for 109. It's a nice game receiving wise. Ray McLeod 2 for 43, but there was a little garbage timer, the 41-yarder there at the end, which was literally as the clock expired. My criticism here of the receivers is that Ayuk let a tremendously important one bounce off his helmet, and Juwan Jennings did not have a productive game, and he missed the block and was called for holding. And these penalties, I mean, there's a lot of them. The 49ers tried to cut them down, and they had fewer penalties than they did in Minnesota, but they still had 5 for 54 yards, and the Bengals were only penalized once for 15 yards. And when you have got holding penalties, you're going to fall behind the sticks. It's going to put the run game in a tough spot because you got to throw to get out of it. It puts Brock Purdy in a tough spot. And Juwan Jennings had one of those penalties. I'll tell you what, this team is really missing Deebo Samuel because Christian McCaffrey is doing a good job in the receiving game. In fact, that's where his most significant production came yesterday. 6 catches, 64 yards. But you need that second adaptable weapon in Deebo Samuel, especially if you're not getting production from Juwan Jennings. And Ayuk dropped a really important pass yesterday, the one that clanged off of his helmet. Running back, yeah, I don't put it on Christian McCaffrey. I think he's running hard. I talked about the offensive line not being able to get the push, and it's coincided directly with Trent Williams getting hurt against Cleveland. They had 5 excellent games running the ball, 3 poor games running the ball, and Trent Williams got hurt early on in the first of those 3 games. But running back, McCaffrey's doing what he can. 12 carries, 54 yards, and the defense is not helping him out either because the 49ers don't have as many opportunities from a complementary football standpoint to run the football if the defense is not doing well. So McCaffrey's doing what he can. I think anytime Elijah Mitchell is in this game, and that's not often, but it telegraphs a run play. They tried to change it up to the option where Purdy threw the interception, but Mitchell was a legal man downfield, or he wasn't, but the offensive linemen were illegally downfield on that play regardless. So anytime Elijah Mitchell's in the game, it hasn't been good as of late for the 49ers. But the grade is mainly scaled toward Christian McCaffrey, who was solid. Not spectacular, but solid in this game. The 49ers have to do a better job blocking for him. That leads us to QB. I waffled between B- and B. But on the aggregate, Purdy was good. 22, 31, 365. Some garbage yardage at the end, so we'll say about 300 yards. A touchdown. I mean, he played out of structure, made some phenomenal plays physically for the 49ers to keep them in this football game. Mentally and physically. I mean, he's manipulating coverages with his eyes, hitting the seams over the middle of the field. Found Ayuk for a couple really nice ones. One while he was getting drilled by Josh Tupou, the defensive tackle, found Ayuk outside the numbers, but then backed up against his own goal line. George Kittle over the middle. That was an elite throw on the 34-yard gain. Purdy physically is a plus quarterback, which has caught a lot of people by surprise. I don't think a lot of people want to believe it because they've been calling him physically limited for a while, but there's no denying that Purdy is a physically gifted quarterback. The burst is elite. The running yardage yesterday as he was running for his life behind an offensive line that wasn't good was tremendously impressive. 6 carries, 57 yards. He was the 49ers leading rusher. You don't want him to be the leading rusher, though. It means you don't have a rushing backbone through the standard run game. But still, Purdy was making stuff happen. Then we dock him for the interceptions, obviously. Big mistake to Jermaine Pratt, who, by the way, made a sensational play off the option. That's one that Purdy just has to eat. Either actually execute the option play or just eat it. He needs to eat that play. He didn't. Jermaine Pratt made a great interception. For a linebacker to be able to, I mean, you're physically sprinting with the quarterback, to have the wherewithal to get your hands up and then the hand-eye coordination to make that play with full padding and a helmet on, full speed. You got to give him credit. So Pratt made that play, and then Purdy on his very next throw threw the interception to Logan Wilson. Thought Wilson had cleared. He hadn't cleared. It's not the first time that we've seen a quarterback be victimized by an underneath linebacker. But outside of that, I mean, those were Purdy's two bad plays in this football game. So we grade with nuance here. We realized that somebody like Patrick Mahomes had 2 picks and a lost fumble yesterday, while his offense only scored 9 points. We realized that the 49ers would have had a much better chance to score more than 17 points had their defense played some complementary football with the offense, helped it out a little bit more, especially early in this football game. Let the Bengals defense get settled in a little bit in this game, right? There's no reason for that. If the 49ers defense does a little bit better on that side of the football, gives the 49ers more opportunities offensively. So all in all, Brock Purdy is not the 49ers problem. And I think objectively, that's easy to say. When you actually watch the tape, somebody like Hall of Famer Kurt Warner agrees with me. He knows a thing or two about the quarterback position. Purdy is making spectacular plays. He's also making mistakes. But the reason that you have a QB on a rookie deal at a cheap price is so you can cover up some of those mistakes with a solid roster that's at least average elsewhere. It's not terrible like the 49ers were in the run game and on defense. So Purdy is the one that's actually, at the lowest level of blame for the 49ers. He'll be the easiest target, but not for good reasons. So he'll get a B minus from me. That's solid. It's not perfect. 49ers have to be a lot better elsewhere. Anyway, it's lunchtime. Seahawks just traded for Leonard Williams. Will the 49ers make a move? Montez Sweat? Jalen Johnson? We'll see. But these have been the grades. We'll talk to you soon.